The NHL regular season might be over, but hockey in Arizona continues as the Tucson Roadrunners getting ready to begin the Calder Cup playoff journey. They're going to start in Coachella Valley. We're going to talk about that game on today's episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast.
Your Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Robyn Leonio. Carl Pavlik is off today, but I am not alone. I've got a good friend, Jason JD Hernandez. He's the host of Locked On Ducks, but he's not talking about Anaheim Ducks or even San Diego Gulls for that matter, because he is also the PA announcer for the Coachella Valley Firebirds, the team the Tucson Roadrunners will be playing in the first round of the Calder Cup Playoffs. Coachella's first time because it's their first year, and Tucson's first time since 2018. So we're going to be in for some really amazing postseason hockey.
We'll see about that for you guys. We'll see.
Absolutely. But the Calder Cup playoffs coming up, and Jason, like we can probably speak about this in a general sense of everything. Is like when I saw the bracket, I'm going to bring up the bracket, in a couple minutes from into the show, but I was thrown off to the sense where this bracket looks weird because the Calder Cup playoffs format has changed significantly since the last time the Roadrunners were in it.
Mm-hmm. It changed since the pandemic, really, because 2020 was still the standard 16 teams. Yep. Then everything changed in 2021 with that weird Pacific Division Championship thing that we kind of had. Remember that Tucson kind of hosted a couple of... That was weird, wasn't it? That was really bizarre.
Yeah, no, that... I was, figuring out what exactly that year was, that 21 Pacific Division playoff. If I'm not mistaken, did the winner of that, did get any trophy or anything? Because
I'll tell you what they got. They actually got something. Well, first off, hey, 2021 was fun. I got to visit you at Tucson, so you know that was fun times. Epic burritos. But anyway, it was weird how decent Tucson was at the time, and San Diego did make a playoff. They lost to San Diego lost to Bakersfield. Right. Bakersfield played Henderson. The Condors wound up winning the division final, which wasn't really a division final, but it kind of was. And they got a banner hanging at Mechanics Bank Arena right now. And I know this because I was just there and I saw the banner and I went, that's not real. You didn't really earn that. They kind of earned that. So they got something. And the Pacific Division Trophy, which does exist, by the way. There is a thing. So that happened. And then last year, the AHL decided, we like having all these Pacific Division teams in it. What if we expanded it? Because also keep in mind, there were some teams that opted out of the 2021 season as well. Not every team played. So now you have every team come back in 2022. And we lost a lot of games in that season as well. So to make up for all that lost revenue from the pandemic season, the 2021 bubble season, the 2022 season as well. Extra revenue. So we got all these extra teams and a play-in round, best of 3. So that's where it really started. And now this year, with 32 AHL teams, the commission or the president said, you know what? Let's keep this. Because why not? Because there are still teams that are still trying to make up for the past 3 years. And a couple of those teams, by the way, are in the play-in. So that extra revenue is going to help the teams out. That being said, it's weird. It's super weird. Like what are we doing here? 7 teams in the Pacific Division, 5 in one, 6 in another. It's all weird and jumbled and ugh.
It is really weird. And let's go ahead and show the bracket to everyone because it is absolutely crazy. And like you said, you take a look at that: 7 teams from the Pacific Division, with only one team getting a bye in the
I hate
Pacific,
it.
three
I
teams
hate
getting a
it.
bye in the Central and the North, 2 teams getting a bye in the Atlantic, and it's just all over the place.
Yeah, just to speak to this, so already you could see Laval, the Canadian teams, they're in it. They get the benefit of having an extra playoff, and so does Toronto. Toronto has that bye, but they actually get extra games. So to see that is kind of good for those teams that did not play before, but still really weird having 7 teams in that division, 5 in the North, 6 in the Central. Oh, sorry, 5 in the Central and 6 in the Atlantic. It's stupid, kind of fun, but also very weird.
I mean, it does like it does make sense first and foremost for the Pacific to have 7, in the sense that like more than anybody else.
Because they have
Like
10
that,
teams.
because they have 10 teams. Yes, thanks to Coachella Valley for being that 10th team. They just came in. Um, what Calgary is doing is a whole nother story, because they moved from Stockton but stayed in the Pacific. But
Yeah. Colorado's got to move to the Central. They're they're the odd team out. They've got to move.
yeah, they do. But overall, looking at the Calder Cup playoffs, is you know I think about some of the players on, just in general, on the rosters of these teams, and if you are a fan of prospects, you would love the Calder Cup this year.
Well, I mean, I'll give a couple examples right off the bat. Syracuse, number 2 in that North Division, they've got a tremendous prospect, one of the top AHL forwards in the league, in Alex Barre-Boulet. Sorry, Barre-Boulet. It's Barre accent, Boulet. He is one of the top AHL forwards in the league. He is one of the top ranking forwards, made the All AHL team. Tampa Bay, believe it or not, has one of the better prospects in the AHL, a team that already has an embarrassment of riches as far as talent goes. And Tampa, they're just going to continue to be good, I guess, especially if he moves up. Ugh.
Yeah, that's to think about the way Tampa was built. Like, they are going to be good for a while.
Yeah.
But there are teams that are just building, and you look at what they have, and you're like, oh wow, these teams have good futures. If you look at you know um, you know Tucson's definitely still a good example.
Yep.
Believe
There, there's there's one team that I'm surprised fell to number 3 in the Atlantic, and that's the Charlotte Checkers. They have by far the best defenseman in Lucas Carlson. I thought they would finish 1 or 2, but Providence, I'm going to give a shout out to Providence here. All right. They have one of the best goalies in the entire American Hockey League, and his name is Brandon Bussey. Bruins fans, get used to that, because Bussey, I think, is going to be someone that could be a backup of the future for the Bruins. And they've got the number 1 overall seed. They're entirely relying on Bussey in goal. So just want to get the East over with before we talk about the West.
absolutely. But even on the West, though, because it is definitely something else. And like the Pacific Division in general, right? It's
Yeah.
just got so much.
Yep.
Coachella Valley has Shane Wright, for God's sake.
Hmm.
So
Oh, I gotta finish my other divisions because I want to give the other divisions some love too, just because it's
okay,
there. The Chicago Wolves nearly got into the playoffs. Both Iowa and Rockford had to win the final games of the season in order to have that play-in series at 4-5. And you've seen a couple of the Central teams this year in Tucson, because I think Texas visited. I think Iowa visited. Um, there's some
those are the 2 common teams to visit very often in Tucson.
Yeah, I sorry to say this, I know Texas kicked their butts earlier this season, but Texas is the best team in the division.
Oh,
and
without a doubt,
it's not close.
Texas is stupid good.
They're very, very good. And Milwaukee's relying on Askarov, their top goaltending prospect, who played in Nashville earlier this season, I think. So they got some pretty good talent. I don't know what Marco Rossi is still doing in Iowa, but he's still there somehow, and so is Nick Patan, where they should both be in Minnesota, but that's neither here nor there. Rockford just got some guys back from the Blackhawks.
Right.
Manitoba's interesting. I don't know how that series is going to go between Milwaukee and Manitoba. That'll be one to watch.
Oh, absolutely. And once again, if you are uh, just a fan of hockey in general, especially a fan of prospects, this the Calder Cup Playoffs is going to be your place, especially if your team isn't in the Stanley Cup. But even then, even if you do have a team in the Stanley Cup, I recommend you watch the Calder Cup as well because there's going to be a lot of really good talent playing down here.
Absolutely.
Well, in a little bit, we're going to get to breaking down the Tucson Roadrunners versus the Coachella Valley Firebirds. We're going to get to that in just a moment. But first, you do have to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors on the show. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. I know I don't know about you guys, but I get super stressed out when trying to find tickets to my sports games, finding whether it's a hockey game or a baseball game, and not only do I get surprised by massive fees, but I also don't even get to see where exactly those how the view of that certain seat, everything like that. I kind of get frustrated by all of that. Gametime really changed how I viewed my ticket buying experience. Those last minute deals, I was able to get some really low prices, all in prices. So no surprise fees to me at all. They showed me the seat views, and they give you a low price guarantee, event cancellation protection, all the best that you need. Gametime is the place for last minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event, even like literally right before it starts. Right before it starts, right?
Yep.
I don't know about you, JD, but like there was a day like I literally buy a ticket on Gametime an hour before it started.
Dollar Angel tickets. All right. You can get Angels tickets for $1, folks.
Yeah, I think a couple years ago I got Diamondbacks tickets for like $12. It was
It's
amazing.
cheap.
Yeah, and it was like right there, like baseline. It was perfect. Gametime is the perfect place to do it. You can snag tickets without the stress with Gametime. You can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
They got to be 20 buck tickets at least.
Absolutely. But let's get to this series.
Okay.
Because it's, I mean, it's going to be a good series in the sense that like you're seeing some pretty darn good talent. You're seeing like Josh Jones just recently joined the Tucson Roadrunners. Shane Wright is on the Coachella Valley Firebirds. Shane Wright's significantly better than Josh Jones, but for the people here in the Valley, Josh Jones' name carries a lot of weight because of his family name. But I'm excited because it's the first time Tucson's back in the playoffs. But kind of see what they can get out of it. But this is going to be a tough matchup for them.
This is going to be an interesting matchup, I think. Mainly because Tucson was not expected to make the playoffs this year. Like, they weren't expected to make a whole lot of noise compared to some of the other teams. I think I saw a couple experts saying that San Jose was going to sneak in there. And San Jose's got a lot of good prospects.
Right.
But a lot of those prospects got called up very early in the season or stayed up. William Eklund was one of those guys that stayed up. And they lost a bunch of games down the stretch. So in comes Tucson. They just needed to win like 2 or 3 games. They got in. So good for Tucson to get in, and they're not without their talent as well. You got Jan Yannick, who's back. You got Michael Kesselring,
Yep.
who's okay. Soderstrom should be back, and Prosvetov, who's honestly probably the only good goalie that would be playing. Like, you've got to rely on Prosvetov because Tyler Parks has been playing replacement level hockey, and so has John Gillies has fallen off big time this year. I
Yeah.
know he only played like 800 minutes this season, but it's really been the Ivan Prosvetov show for Tucson, and he's been decent. This is, am I accurate in saying that he's been decent this
Yes.
season?
He has been decent. And it's interesting because, I had a conversation uh, with Kat Silverman a couple years back, talking about the state of the Arizona Coyotes goaltenders.
Yeah.
At the time, Aiden Hill was still a starter for the Tucson Roadrunners, and Ivan was the backup. And Kat had said she wasn't completely sold on Aiden Hill and believed that Prospatov was the future goaltender for the Arizona Coyotes. I think since then he hasn't proved that, and there's a reason why he's stayed in Tucson as long as he has. To this season where he's just played, just I guess mediocre.
I don't want to say the word mediocre here. I would say that it's been adequate at times. The last time that Ivan Prosvetov played at Coachella, not the December game, but the game in February, Prosvetov I thought was decent at best, but you know he's still got to track the puck a little bit better than he has, especially against a very potent offense
Right.
in Coachella Valley. And the Firebirds are a team that does shoot kind of a lot, but they are also very selective in their shots. They boast one of the best shot percentages in the league, and they kind of owned Prosvetov earlier this season. So I don't see any reason why that wouldn't happen again. But he's decent. He's fine. But if your last line of defense isn't going to get the job done, and
I think a
it
lot of
is what it is.
the biggest problem, and this is a conversation I had with Carl Pavlik, the host here in Lockdown Coyotes. I've we've discussed the lack of defensive top end defensive prospects for the Coyotes organization, and to see how it works in Tucson, it kind of leaves Prospatov and the Roadrunners goalies to dry. Um, Vlad Koyachana, I had a lot of hopes for, and you know, he's fine. He's just not top. I just can't see him really, holding down that fort.
Well,
Outside of that, it's really hard to find that
I'll,
outside of
I'll
that.
give a plug here to Sean O'Brien, who does the AHL analytics, and Tucson had a pretty decent defenseman in Cam Dineen. What happened to Cam Dineen?
He was traded.
Yeah, why was that? What was the thought process in that trade to Bakersfield? I don't know. But, you give up your top defenseman, your only defenseman, and you're going to be lacking in the blue line. I mean, Kolyachonic right now is your top defenseman. And you have Ronald Knott still. You have Devontae Stevens, who's a replacement level defenseman. Soderstrom, who's kind of a third pair defenseman. If those are your top guys, that's going to be where because the defensive point shares, according to the chart, is just a couple of guys, Kolyachonic and Not, and that's it. Everyone else tends to give up a lot of goals, which also makes Prosvetov look bad in general. And I think that's going to be the big difference in this series, unfortunately. What'll keep Tucson in it, and you can talk to this, is one guy.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the one forward that is probably going to keep Tucson in it?
That's AHL's leading scorer, Michael Carconi.
It's Michael Carconi and a bunch of guys, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like if you look at the AHL stats page based off scoring, Michael Carcone is on top, and you see next to it says Tucson. You don't see another Tucson player for miles.
Yeah. It's kind of sad.
I mean, it's you know,
I mean, Carcone is a terrific player.
oh, absolutely,
He's terrific, but
and
it's like
I
Gladys Knight
love
in the Pips.
yeah, and I love the fact that the background of how Tucson was able to acquire Carcone. Um, if for those that weren't following it, Carcone was joined the Roadrunners off a loan in 21 during the COVID year because the Milwaukee Admirals elected not to play that year, so they loaned their players out
Hmm.
that were prospects of the then of the Nashville Predators, and yeah, so the Nashville Predators decided not to re-sign his contract, so he decided to sign with the Arizona Coyotes on an AHL deal with the Roadrunners. So
Big
because like, hey, we
mistake.
saw what you did, were able to do with us in Tucson during that shortened year, so we'll take you.
Big mistake. Milwaukee, why? I mean, they're still good. I mean, I shouldn't say Milwaukee, why? Because they're in the playoffs right now. They are a top seed in the Central Division. But I shouldn't say Gladys Knight and the Pips because most of the listeners aren't that old. So, what else can I say? Justin Timberlake and NSYNC. Um, there's got to be a better example than that. Help me out, Robyn.
Ooh,
There's got to be a better music reference here.
I'm trying to think of one. This the
Goodness.
Arizona Heat doesn't allow my brain to go down deep into that.
But you get what I'm saying. The depth is just not there offensively for the Roadrunners, and I unfortunately think that could be their ultimate undoing.
Yes, I think that's their problem, and like, I'm glad they were able to make it in. Josh Doan is finally going to get some, a glimpse of postseason hockey because uh, his 2 years he played with ASU, he was unable to get to the NCAA tournament.
True.
Um, the only hope still it's still considered a hope. It is very 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 slim hope because it seems unlikely to happen. And at this point, by the time you are listening, it could have changed. Um, but Logan Cooley still has yet to decide what he wants to do. If he wants to go back to University of Minnesota for another season or sign his contract. If he signs his contract now, he can play.
He would have had to have signed it by the time of this recording because the playoff rosters do have to come out um, by early Tuesday. And if he hasn't signed by now, then he ain't coming to Tucson. So, I hate to burst the bubble of everyone
Yeah.
listening, but
So the chances are extremely slim. So unfortunately, don't expect it. There was a lot of hope for it. I mean, there was also a lot of hope that Sam Lipkin would also sign a deal and play for Tucson, but he decided to play for Quinnipiac for another year. Notice how I named two players who were in the Frozen Four championship just last weekend. So
yeah. Look,
uh,
they want to play for that NCAA title, and
oh
one of
yeah,
them just won it,
exactly.
and they
Because
want to run it back.
yeah, because if they look at it, like they have a higher chance of getting meaningful hockey in the NCAA right now.
It's sad but true. That's how it is.
But
Uh,
Josh Doan was able to it believes otherwise. I mean, no matter what, he's still in Arizona.
yeah, it could be worse. It could certainly be worse.
But
Oh,
let's get to Coachella Valley a little bit more because this team is really good. I'm looking at some of their players. I've mentioned Shane Wright just a couple times already because like that's I guess the one that everyone's paying attention to. But who else outside of Shane Wright is like
oh my
really there?
goodness. Um, I have to go through like most of the roster because they're all very good. I'm gonna start with goaltending first off. Joey Decord has been one of the
ASU grad.
guys. ASU grad. Oh, Got to give a shout out to Joy Decord, by the way, which is related to Locked On Coyotes, to the Coyotes. I loved that the Kraken coach gave Joey Decord those last 90 seconds to enter the game in front of his alma mater at the barn that he partially helped build. And the ovation that he got from the Coyotes fans, from the ASU fans, from the Kraken fans, everybody was cheering that moment. And he loved it. He loved it 100%. And Joey Decord is one of those guys that everybody loves. If you want an AHL version of not really goalie hugs, but goalie kisses, yes, this is a thing at Coachella Valley, is the goalie kisses. Then Joey Decord is your guy. He also has a penchant for taking the water bottle, just kind of, undoing the cork and splashing whatever player is the first star of the game. He's done that every single freaking time. I love it. But Decord has been just a tremendous starter for the Coachella Valley Firebirds. Above average goaltender. Save percentage of 918, which is above league average. 238 goals against. That record, though, 26-8-3-3, is very strong. And he has had 3 shutouts, 3 very convincing shutouts this season. I should point out that he fared very well against Tucson earlier this season with a couple of victories. No shutouts there. They had to score 1 goal. Yeah, yay. One of those against Ivan Prosvetov back on February 15th. And Decord just owned him. Decord completely owned that Tucson offense. Decord's the guy. And they're going to ride him throughout the entire playoffs. But as far as defensemen go, which defenseman do you want to talk about? Because they're all good. There's a bunch here.
Yeah, I mean there is a lot. I'm trying to look at their roster. I'm like, man, like
yeah, they're stacked on defense.
I don't even know where to begin on that one.
Yeah, they have 4 guys that are legit top AHL defensemen. Pick a name. I'll tell you about them.
Let's get to. I'm gonna just do like a randomizer here and just look at the first one that pops to my name.
All right.
Pops to my eyes. Riker Evans.
Woo. Okay. Riker Evans might be considered the rookie of the year in the American Hockey League. Definitely the top rookie defenseman in the AHL. So far, the numbers reflect that completely. Riker Evans was looked at as being kind of that guy 2 or 3 years down the line. I didn't see him making the ascension that he has already. As I mentioned, he was the rookie of the month, I believe, last month. And he's among the league leaders for rookie defensemen. 44 points, 6 goals. Should have been more goals, by the way. And right now, he is the quarterback for the Firebirds power play system. He's usually on that PP1. Does a good job of maintaining puck control, keeping it in. And also does a great job of finding those guys and finding the perfect pass for a couple of tic-tac-toe goals, which we've seen a few times of late.
Right.
And Riker usually gets a second assist because he's usually finding where the defense is going to go. Particularly teams like San Jose, Tucson, as I just mentioned. And you said that Tucson doesn't really have that good a defense.
No.
Especially special teams. If Tucson gets in PK trouble and Riker Evans is quarterbacking your power play, be careful. Be very, very careful because that's where Coachella Valley can be dangerous. And Riker Evans is that guy that could be just really the thorn in your side.
That seems to be, I mean, one thing that's just like, okay, that's, got to pay attention to that. And I'm sure, I would sure hope so, that that Roadrunners coach Steve Potvin knows this and is going to like, hey, let's look at the film right here. Let's pay
Yeah.
attention.
Another defenseman to watch out for, Brogan Rafferty, who is among the league leaders in defensemen. I think he had like 41 or 42 assists this season. I know he had 9 goals. So he's about 50 points this season. Their top defenseman as far as points. He usually quarterbacks the PP2 unit and has great vision and has one of the strongest forechecks in the game. This is where I think Rafferty shines a lot, is when he gets in that neutral zone, he can use that active stick, draw players to him, but also just like pluck passes left and right and get goals the sort of easy way. And Coachella does this a lot, by the way. They are the quintessential team that takes advantage of mistakes. If you make a mistake in your own defensive zone, you're probably going to pay for it. There was a game against the Ontario Reign where the Reign had not one, not two, but three turnovers in their own zone right in front of Cal Peterson. And they just got bushwhacked on that game. So that's another thing. Tucson, watch out for those turnovers.
Yeah, I think if, you know, Tucson tends to follow a lot of the same mistakes that the Coyotes made in terms of penalties and turnovers. So that might just end up,
Being their undoing.
yes, be their undoing, which will signal a very quick exit from the Calder Cup playoffs. But we can go ahead and talk about the series as a whole now because it's a best of three. But for
Yeah.
those that don't know,
I can't believe I went the whole 30 minutes and didn't talk about my favorite guy, Cameron Hughes. He's one of my favorites because I like to milk it. This has happened, like, as a public address announcer, I love crowd participation. Love it. And it's gotten better and better throughout the season, where the Hughes gets longer and longer and it marinates.
oh, I can only imagine that.
And
Like that just seems like something that like makes you feel awesome to just hear, especially when the crowd just kind of you know joins in or has that kind of fun with it. Like, hey, you got to be engaging.
oh, absolutely. I mean, as an announcer, you always want to get the crowd into it, especially at Coachella Valley. I feel like we have one of the biggest home ice advantages in the league right now, where it gets pretty loud in there. We do the wave during the games for whatever reason. I love it. I have a love-hate with the wave, but in that sense, I love it. The Hughes call, and he's been kind of hot lately. He's got this season, I think, 19 goals this season. One of those top guys. And Coachella has a lot of guys, as you've mentioned, that score a lot of goals. A lot of goals. You have Jesper Froden, who's up with Seattle right now. Cole Lind, he hit 30 goals this season. The captain, Max McCormick, watch out for him. Cameron Hughes, I mentioned him. Ty Cartier just got called up by Seattle for the 2 road games because Daniel Sprong is out. So lucky you, no Ty Cartier this series, but you got Hughes, Torinsky, Ville Petman, who's been on a roll lately, Alexander True, former Barracuda prospect, Brogan Rafferty I mentioned, Austin Pagansky's been hot, Luke Henman. There's an embarrassment of riches on this Firebirds team. Sorry.
I know it doesn't, and it doesn't surprise me. I mean, there's a reason why the Coachella Valley Firebirds are the number 2 team in the Pacific Division right now.
Yep, and also the number 2 offense in the entire league, right behind the Texas Stars.
Yeah, there you go. It just shows you that the Western Conference this year is going to be really fun to watch. But
Yeah.
we got a 3-game series on this one, and as you can tell, it does seem pretty darn lopsided. Tucson getting in pretty lucky. I didn't really expect them to make it in until like I realized that they were on inside, just barely on the fringe, looking outside. I'm like, all right, if they can hold on to it, hey, they're on to the playoffs, and that's at least good enough for me. But I mean, hey, and for you, you get at least three, but most likely more games as to continue to get back to Ashik Arena as a PA announcer.
Love Acrisure. It's a great atmosphere. Um, shall I give my official prediction here?
Let's do it.
Okay. Coachella's obviously the stronger team. They got the better goaltending, better defense, deeper lineup as far as forwards. A lot of experts have this going 2 games, and honestly, so do I. I have Firebirds in a 2-game sweep, which will be Wednesday, Friday. The goaltending's been too hot, and Tucson does have a tendency to turn the puck over a lot in their end, and they do make a lot of mistakes. And Coachella's that team that can strike just like that.
Tucson had a really really poor um, April to end the regular season.
They did.
It was a, it was abysmal. I thought it's like, hey, maybe if they play well, they can catch up and make it to fifth, so they can at least have a more you know reasonable uh, matchup in the first round. But nope, they get they stumbled, and now they got to play Coachella Valley, and um,
Nobody wanted to play Coachella Valley.
I got like I have like the optimistic prediction, and I have the realistic prediction because I try to be as optimistic as I can for Coyotes and Roadrunners fans out there. But the most optimistic I can get you guys is the Roadrunners steal one game in this series, and make it to Sunday in Game 3. The very likelihood, in all seriousness, no, is that this team this series will end up in a 2-game sweep for in favor of Coachella. I've looked at their stats. I've looked, saw some of their games, some of their highlights. This team is just too good.
No kidding. It's fun for me. Plus, we have to mention, I've said this before, the atmosphere in Acrisure Arena. We've only lost 5 games at that arena. 5.
Yeah, and all three. This is an interesting thing that surprised me is that all three of these games are at are at
Acrisure. You know what? That's the nature of the 3-game series and trying to catch up to the other series that are taking place. That's just how it is.
exactly. But one thing I'd be looking forward to, um, is because like whatever is in the second, coming past the second round, you got and beyond. Calgary is going to be waiting for some pretty tough, for some or like really tough Calgary teams going to be waiting for some
Yeah.
stuff to
I mean, Abbotsford is good. Colorado is fine. If there's an upset in that Pacific, it might be Bakersfield over Colorado. No, I don't know. I see Colorado sweeping Ontario. Sorry, Rain fans, but I see Colorado winning that series easily because Cal Peterson has looked. I'm gonna be careful with the word I choose here. Cal Peterson has been underwhelming, is the word I'll use. So I see that ending in a 2-game sweep as well. Bakersfield could upset Abbotsford, maybe. That could be the series. Actually, that will be the one that goes 3, I think. That one goes 3.
fun. That seems like an interesting one. Now I got a question for you as we get ready to close things off because we are approaching around 40 minutes on this show. Um, the Calder Cup final matchup.
Oh, God. You want me to go that far? Well, Coachella could take Calgary. They've played them close all year long. I will be both optimistic and realistic that I do think Coachella could take the West. Now, the East is going to be very interesting. Providence, I think could overtake Toronto in a 7-game series. So I actually have Providence and Coachella Valley in the Calder Cup final, but after that, what are you doing to me?
I'll let you.
That
I'll let it
series
be.
could go 7,
I'll let it be just there. You don't have to give a winner. But
but I could realistically see the Firebirds in the Calder Cup final.
which would be fun, like to make it that far to get the experience, especially in as a expansion AHL team.
Yeah, especially in a non-conventional hockey market, which
Yeah,
is kind of weird that Palm Springs is considered that, but at the same time, I didn't realize how many former NHLers live in the Coachella Valley. There's a lot.
a lot of like like current and former NHLers, or like you say, former NHLers love to chill in the Southwest desert.
Yeah. And that includes our color commentator for TV games, Grant Fuhr, who does a tremendous job, by the
Yep.
way.
Just gives you an example of the market, and it's non-traditional because it's in the desert. It's I mean that the Coyotes and the Roadrunners get the same thing, but a lot of former NHLers love to chill in Scottsdale and Paradise Valley. It's
I think a lot more of them like to chill in Palm Springs, though. I'm just saying.
we'll see. Uh,
Hey,
but
I am being good and not throwing any shade. So I'm
I
being good.
you got it. But that does remind me though, like, if it's not this time around, sometime next year, I'm 100% gonna try to be making a Southwest AHL road trip, catch a San Diego Gulls game, catch an Ontario Reign game, a Coachella Valley Firebirds game, Henderson Silver Knights game, as well as of course the Tucson Roadrunners game. Um,
Henderson's loud.
yeah,
It's loud there. They have a town crier and everything.
yeah. I was able to cross off Bakersfield on my AHL arena list, but the rest I still gotta check out.
You should. It's a lot of fun. It's fun times at Acrisure Arena.
And of course, I spent 6 years in Tucson, so I don't need to go crazy with that. But maybe just follow Tucson to each of those cities.
Tucson's fun. It's a fun time.
Yeah,
They got the donuts.
best
They got the hot dogs.
best donuts in the AHL.
Ooh, don't say that to all the other eight. Well, not many AHL teams have the donuts, but we have empanadas, and we have some of the best tater tots in the league, and we have Shaq's Big Chicken. Just saying.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But I mean, like again, I'm gonna try to take a look at doing that next year to kind of take a look at it. But as we get ready to close things off, as we're running overtime on this show, do you have any final things you'd like to share with Locked On Coyotes listeners?
Firebirds fans and hey, Coyotes fans, if you want to check out a new arena, check out Acrisure Arena. It's a fun time. You'll hear my voice as the public address for the Firebirds, and we'll be wearing all red. So if you want to see some good playoff hockey, come on down to Acrisure. It's a good time. And for the Firebirds fans, stay #fired up.
That's Jason JD Hernandez from Locked On Ducks, and of course the Coachella Valley Firebirds for joining us on today's show. Hope you guys like what you heard today. If you did, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, and subscribe if you have yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. Don't forget to
And
interact.
if you didn't like us, we're Locked On Devils.
Damn. But don't forget to interact with us on social media. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/Locked On Coyotes, on Twitter at LO_Coyotes. I'm personally at Robyn_Leonio. Carl, who wasn't able to join us on today's episode, but he is at 5 for Howling. Jason, you can go ahead and share where everyone can follow you.
At StimpyJD. Snacks of the game, baby. Woo!
Well, once again, you can interact with us, ask a question you might have. We might answer right back or on a future episode of the podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's episode. Hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope you guys are staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.